Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the June 16th version of the Community Development Committee meeting, and we'll start out with a roll call. Julie?
Sean Anderson.
Present.
Scott Counter.
Present.
Dan Hansen.
Here.
Jerry Van Someren.
Well, good evening,
Present.
ladies and gentlemen. This is the,
Ryan Shirley.
hopefully he'll be here in a moment. I'm hoping that, has everybody had a chance to review the minutes, and does anybody have a question or addition or comment? Otherwise, we'll consider the minutes to be approved and we'll move on. Good, minutes are approved. Moving into public comment, I would ask Mr. Peavy to come to the podium, introduce yourself, where do you live, and say your piece. And I'll say for the benefit of everybody, Mr. Peavy had been on the county board for 16 years, is that right? 18 years, and I welcome you back, Bill.
So my name is William Peavy. I live at 2530 County Road N. I apologize in advance if my voice fails. I had severe COVID last winter, and my lungs have never really regained their function. I'd like to comment on I call a nasty, threatening letter that I and all adjacent landowners to the Wildwood Trail received. There was no contact in person. We all got a nasty letter from Dennis Marco, Parks Administrator. I own approximately 200 acres that either is bisected or adjacent to the trail. I wanted to address the items directly affected by me that were in the letter. County staff blocked one of the crossings with a log. This was illegal and extremely dangerous. I have two deeded crossings of the railroad. I have the deeds with me if anybody doubts that. They're from 1882, and they specifically say, and I quote, "Shall provide a cattle pass wide enough to be crossed by teams and wagons in two of the 40s, including the one blocked." I cannot imagine the county's liability if I came down my side of the trail on my side-by-side with my two grandsons in there and hit that log that was buried in the grass, and they were injured. Of the cutting of the county fence, 100% of the fence on the east side of the trail from county end to 42nd was erected by me and my family at my expense and with my labor, not the county. Remnants of the old fence is still visible, so anybody can verify that any fence cut was my own, not the county's. Use of the right-of-way. We are a century farm next to the right-of-way. Our family's been there 100 years, more than 100 now. My wife even remembers the train going by. Our family has used that right-of-way continuously for 75 years to access the woods and fields that we first rented and now own. My father-in-law, now deceased, drove tractor along the rails with the railroad's permission to access the fields and woods. I personally have used the right-of-way continuously for the past 30 years to check cattle and fence all summer and fall, not in the dark of night, not trying to hide, and when I needed and when I wanted to go there. I was never told I could not by any county employee. A couple items that are not in the letter that I also want to address. A couple years ago, I was here and asked for no dogs had to be on leash signs. They were never done. So this spring, we lost a calf. Cow calving by the woods. Of course I didn't see it. If I'd have seen it, it wouldn't have happened. Dog tracks around it, calf dead, cow really mad. There's only one way that dog got there, and that was somebody walking on the trail. Their dog went through the fence, got near the calf, and I don't know if a couple of you farm, when that cow got mad, something happened, and my poor calf was dead. Remember, that's the whole profit for a whole year for that one cow. I fed that cow for a year, and the dog off the trail. Again, I'm assuming, because I obviously didn't see it, it wouldn't happen. Took care of that calf. Excuse me. My son, Scott, who now rents the farm, got an email from Dennis Marco saying that hunting was allowed. I sat on the county board when we approved the park ordinance that listed parks where hunting was allowed, and the Wildwood Trail was not on there. I don't know where that came from. I don't know what authority he has, but I emailed him with the exact quote of the county ordinance that says that. And I guess last but not least of all, the original deed from 1882 states the land agent purchased, and I quote, the right of way for a railroad. No land was deeded, only the right of way. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Bill. Tracy Helgerson.
Tracy Helgeson, I own land on 20th and 250th, 60.5 acres. Over the last probably 8 or 10 years, I've spent a lot of my money, a lot of my hours, lots of hours, trying to cut back on the buckthorn on my property. And over those years, I've talked to several people that know a lot more about buckthorn than what I do, more than what I will ever know. And as soon as I tell them where my land is, oh, it's next to the Wildwood Trail. That's a major flyway for the birds. It's starting on the Wildwood Trail and expanding out from there. Anywhere along the Wildwood Trail, you can't see more than 15, 20 feet. It's nothing but buckthorn on either side. My question is, I guess, what is the county doing, or what's their plan of doing to try and get a handle on this and try and eradicate the buckthorn? It's an invasive. I'm sure you've all heard about it. That's my question.
Thank you, Mr. Helgerson. And I hope I say this last name right. Kelly Faldy? Did I say that right?
I don't have any prepared notes here, but I got the nasty letter, same one that Bill got, calling us all vandals. I've spent my whole life there. Using that trail, I have land on 250th and on County Road B. I go across to between the two. I have private properties between me. I have permission to cross them properties. In this letter, it tells me I can't ride private property to the trail, over the top of the trail, onto private property on the other side without getting a $200 fine. In my life, I've spent quite a bit of time when I'm on that trail. If there are trees down, brush down, whatever, I've cut it up, pushed it off. I've had bobcat down there filled in washed out ruts that nobody bothers to take care of. I've helped to maintain it. I see garbage on it, I pick it up. Also, these fences that we've been cutting, the fences that are there were really poor 40 and 50 years ago, and today they're almost non-existent. But I have been told that I'm cutting fences and pushing these out of the way. I've also found this is not my land, this would be on Todd Gross's land, where a really big tree was taken off Todd Gross's land, pulled across the trail, pushed up onto the trail, and also left on Todd Gross's land. I could take you there and show it to you. This guy has permission to go into private property, grab other people's stuff. Where is all this stumps and trees and all this stuff coming from that he's blocking all these trails with? Why has this pot been stirred at all? It's been fine for all these years. Why is it all of a sudden being stirred now? It didn't need to be stirred. Should have been left alone.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your comments. Is there anybody else who'd like to give public comment? You're welcome to. I'd allow that.
I guess this letter talks about authorized access and unauthorized access. I guess whose decision is that to say it's authorized or not authorized? And what determines an authorized access from a non-authorized access? I've got 60.5 acres. I've got 8 acres on the west side of the tracks, 52.5 acres on the east side of the tracks. Private property owners to the south of me, to the north of me, on the 52.5 acres. The 8 acres is along the road. The 52.5 acres, I've got private property on the south, to the north, to the east, and then the railroad bed on my west line fence. If they block that field driveway, and it hasn't been as of a week ago I was down there, there was nothing dropped across that field driveway. But if they drop something across that field driveway, I don't even have access to my 52.5 acres. I guess whose decision, whose call is it, authorized versus unauthorized?
I want to tell you one thing about this public comment process is that it's not a dialogue, so we're not going to answer a question directly, and I want to apologize for that, but it's a good question, and I hope that somebody comes to you and gets you an answer, and you can talk to Mr. Peavy, because he's as schooled in this as everybody else is. So I appreciate you coming. I want to tell you that.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else who'd like to offer public comment? I'll allow that.
This letter refers to complaints that have been filed against us. I don't suppose we could see the complaints that have been filed against us, but have you seen them? Do they exist? Have you seen these complaints? Any of them? Apparently there's complaints. That's in the letter too. I'm sure you won't show them to us, but I'm just wondering if you've seen them. Or do they exist?
Thank you for coming. All right, any other comments? I truly do appreciate you folks coming. And thank you. Any other comments? All right, I'll end public comment. There are no public hearings. We're going to move into business items. I would like to start with item number 2 right now. Sure. And that puts John Hilgers on the bubble for a staff report.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and committee members. I just want to spend a few moments with you, giving the committee an update on our zoning ordinance update process. And maybe for the benefit of our new members, I'm just going to step back in time for a few moments. So going back in time, in 2019, the St. Croix County Board of Supervisors approved what we call the St. Croix County Comprehensive Zoning Revision. And basically what a zoning revision is when a county decides to declare that the ordinance is out of date, and we basically start over by crafting a new zoning ordinance. So the new ordinance is created and replaces the old outdated code. There were a number of reasons why we did this in 2019. There were a number of changes to state statute that really limited counties' abilities to regulate solar, wind energy, cell tower items, and things of that nature. So we wanted to make sure our code was consistent with statute. And it had been some time under letter B We wanted to establish zoning districts and regulations that fit the very needs of the towns. And as I mentioned last week, 17 of the 21 towns are under county zoning. And it had been some time that we've really gone out and talked to the towns. As you know, the county's changed drastically in the last 20 years. The western part of the county has seen tremendous growth, while the middle and eastern parts of the county have retained their agricultural flavor. So we needed to blend everything and create an updated ordinance that reflected these changes. So from 2017 to 2019, we conducted approximately 50 meetings across the county that included town boards, town plan commissions, county residents. We had public open houses, a citizen task force, local development professionals, and of course, you as the development committee and the county board. And we really tried to get a broad brush look of what we really needed to take a look at. We also had a very interactive county webpage that people could access. And once the code was adopted, we informed our committee and board that because of the size of the project, we would need to revisit this in 2 years. Now that we've worked with the code for 2 years, we've learned some of the tweaks and some changes that need to be made, and that's basically what this project is all about. So to get things started, we've been compiling comments from our residents, working with property owners, things that we've learned that we could clarify to make the zoning process a little bit easier for our residents and business owners. So in late April, we did craft a number of different amendments that were included in your packet, and I want to emphasize they are draft. We sent some of these changes out to all of our affected towns. We wanted to give them at least a couple months to review, react to some of these proposed changes. I know some of their plan commissions in the towns have been meeting along with their town boards. And as of today, we haven't really had any meaningful comment back, but I do know some of the towns are still reviewing the changes. So what did we do in 2017? We just basically started over and we asked residents and town board members what was working with county zoning and what wasn't. We just needed to start with that basic premise. We received hundreds of comments, and with the help of our consultant, we categorized them into 5 major topics of emphasis. Residents were concerned that the county find a balance between allowing rural homes and protecting ag lands. Again, as I mentioned, some of our towns saw some significant growth between 2000 and 2020. We also heard comments about addressing the conflict between industrial ag and rural housing. And this has more to do with the concentrated animal feedlot operations, the operations that have 500 or more livestock. There were concerns with towns with farms getting bigger, and we wanted to address that. We also wanted to address the differing needs of the urbanizing towns and the rural towns. So for example, the topic of commercial uses came up. Some of our urbanizing towns like Somerset and St. Joe wanted to make sure we had more aesthetic provisions in our code dealing with landscaping and signage and things of that nature for our commercial code. Whereas some of the more rural towns on the eastern edge were more concerned about people starting a home business. So we really wanted to take an in-depth look at our home occupation provisions. We also heard quite a bit of people wanting the county to consider allowing ag entertainment uses in more locations, and this has to do with wedding venues, outdoor activities on farm operations and things like that. And then also we just wanted to reorganize our code and make it more user-friendly. The zoning ordinance prior to this was kind of an addition and amendments that were added in pieces over time, and this really gave us an opportunity to take a fresh look at that. So imagine, if you will, we had a former zoning ordinance prior to 2017 where we had one zoning district that represented about 80% of the property in the unincorporated area. This was called the Rural Residential Zoning District. And I was quite surprised when I came to the county in 2017 how encompassing this zoning district was. Within this one zoning district, you could have 2-acre lot size major residential subdivisions. You could have major livestock facilities allowing up to 499 animal units as a permitted use, over 500 with a CUP. We also allowed junkyards and slaughterhouses in these districts as well. So what we heard loud and clear from the residents is that we wanted to get rid of that one-size-fits-all People were investing a lot of money in major subdivisions, different investments, and they were concerned about protecting and beginning to separate some of these conflicting land uses that were allowed in the one district. So as part of our process, we worked with all the towns. We reviewed about 22,000 parcels with the different towns with separate meetings. Many of those meetings I mentioned were individual meetings with the towns, literally going through different sections and parcels. And from this process, we created 2 new zoning districts. We created the R1 zoning district, which allows 1 dwelling unit per 10 acres. So if you have a 40-acre section, you'd have the possibility of creating 4 dwelling units. In this same zoning district, we would allow concentrated animal feedlot operations, as you see up on the screen. Up to 499 is a permitted use, and 500 or more is a conditional use. Major subdivisions are not allowed in the R1, and that's where we began to separate. We were separating major subdivisions with some of the more intense agricultural uses. We also minimized our lot size from 2 acres to 1.5 acres. The R2 district is a little bit different. We allow more density, we allow major subdivisions, but we limit how big a feedlot operation can get. We cap that at 200 units. And that was just one example of how we began to separate the different land use conflicts. So in 2019, I'm just going to show real quickly the zoning map that was adopted. And as you can see, the towns pretty much followed suit as far as what was happening on the ground. You see the western towns such as Somerset, you get into Richmond, portions of Warren, Kinnick, they chose to go with an R2, which allows major subdivisions with 1.5 acre lot minimums. And that makes sense because some of those towns on our western side are seeing more urbanization, more development. You get to the middle of the map, you'll see some of the blue and green zoning district designations. Those represent our agricultural districts. We promote heavily the use and operation of ag operations, but we limit the residential density in those areas. So in the green area, we allow the 1 unit per 40 acres, which is the Ag 1, and the blue is represented by Ag 2, which allows 2 units per 40 acres. So you can see the shift. Those towns that are listed up there in the agriculture, they're very focused on maintaining their towns as agriculture. They do get benefits from that. These towns are eligible for tax credits for their property owners if they meet qualifications and meet our farmland preservation plan requirements. So these towns, through this process, did verify their participation. And then we get out to the east side of the county. You see the towns of Emerald, Glenwood, Springfield, and Katy. They chose to go with a limited residential R1, which allows 1 unit per 10 acres, but they chose not to participate in the ag farmland preservation tax credit program. So as you can see, from west to east, we have more growth on the west side. The zoning supports that. Very limited growth in the middle of our county, which is very heavily supported in agricultural uses and zoning, and then very limited development on our east side. And that tends to reflect what we're seeing in the marketplace. In addition to some of the changes we made, we did allow provisions to allow second driveways in certain circumstances. We worked with the towns on parking and loading requirements, minimizing paving requirements in some of our commercial districts, especially those that facilitate agricultural entertainment uses. Yes, we did need to address the chicken and duck issue. Our old code did not allow provisions for people to have chickens and ducks on parcels with 3 acres or less. So we went through that process, and actually that was one of our more prevalent public comments that we heard in our process. We established fence and wall heights. The other thing we did is that we increased the ability for people to use their property for major home occupations. Instead of 20% of the home being used for business use, we upped that to 50%. We bumped the total max up to 1,500 total square feet, and we minimized some of the buffer requirements in some of our home occupation standards. So as you can see, we were trying to react to some of the comments we were hearing from our towns. In many cases, our code became less restrictive, and gave property owners more flexibility compared to our older code. In your packet, you're also given a matrix of the changes that we're summarizing. And some of the changes you're going to see relate to solar and wind energy systems. I mentioned earlier we are somewhat limited by how the county can regulate these types of uses. We allow them in every district, however, they are required to have a conditional use permit. And we are allowed to place reasonable conditions on those uses as long as they protect the public health. That statute really limits us from prohibiting those uses. Commercial kennel, again, we reduced some of the requirements. We also acknowledge short-term rentals, that they are happening in the county. Through the state, they are required to be licensed. And our own county health and human services inspects and processes those applications on behalf of the state. So again, in your packet, you have about 3 pages of summaries that we put as far as the new code and some of the things we're contemplating on changing. I'll highlight maybe 3 or 4 and I'll open it up for questions after that. We did have a planned development zoning district. This would have been a separate zoning district that really would have applied to the Holton area, which is in the town of St. Joseph. They were contemplating doing some mixed-use development, which allows a number of different uses to take place on the same property. And they wanted to use some of the older structures in the village of Holton, which would have meant setback waivers because some of those buildings are built quite a bit up to the property line. Since St. Joe's opted out into their own zoning ordinance, we no longer need this provision. Again, this was created when we believe St. Joseph was going to be under county zoning, but they have since opted out as part of this process. Another highlight under section 15.285, we are adding provisions for skiing facilities. We are allowing them as a conditional use in the C2 and C3 district. This item came up kind of as we were going through this process. I believe this came up last year. We did some research and we did add provisions for skiing facilities. We also have provisions for campgrounds. We have basic submittal requirements that will make it easier for our staff to review these types of applications. And again, touching on skiing facilities, 15.381, we did add provisions because skiing facilities are developed within steep slopes. We did provide an exception for skiing facilities to put footings for chairlifts and things of that nature in steep slope areas. Again, touching on solar and wind energy systems, we did add administrative processes to those items. Our old code simply reflected state statute, but we expanded that to be very clear on the administrative process. And then we made some changes to definitions. And then as part of your packet, we did include the actual changes itself with the full document with additions being underlined and words being stricken. And then in terms of questions and next steps, we're here just kind of giving a quick overview. We still need to have our corporation council review the changes that are being contemplated. We would be required to have a public hearing with you, the Community Development Committee, and then of course you would make a recommendation to the full county board. And again, beginning on page 38 of your packet, we have the entire code as it exists now, and again, we have the changes underlined and stricken. And I think I'll stop there and entertain any questions you might have.
First off, I just wanted to check, do we separately label out and do we still have ag enterprise areas in St. Croix? So I know we had one from up in the north, and then there used to be one down, was it by Katy or the southern part of the county anyway?
Yes, we still have ag enterprise areas, but they were never given distinct zoning. That had nothing to do with it. And both of those still exist.
Well, in this, I see that, you talked a little bit about the junk, identifying junk and that. With this, I'm not seeing, I didn't get a chance to really review to see the actual definitions, but with that, if we're identifying junk in an area, are we also identifying the mechanics of action? If we identify somebody that has an issue and how we're going to approach it and what how does this work out? We've identified the guy has it. What's the action plan and how are we going to enforce it?
So we spent quite a bit of time. We actually had one study session with the committee back when this was being crafted that we spent quite a bit of time discussing the junk ordinance. And I think because of past enforcement actions and some different results through the court proceedings, we felt we needed to regroup, redefine our junk section, make it much more definitive or very specific in terms of what we consider junk. And from an enforcement perspective, we actually are allowing an area on your property where you can have pieces of materials that could be reused or recycled in the future. And as part of our zoning update process, we're saying that you can have 2% of your rear yard area or up to 600 square foot max, if screened, where you can house and facilitate these items. So from a zoning enforcement perspective, if we get a complaint, this is the code our staff is using right now. And I'm not sure, I think Mike Wozniak is here, I'm not sure if we've had an occasion where we've applied our new ordinance to a junk situation. But this would be the ordinance and the code that our staff, our zoning administration staff and corporation council would use to pursue violations.
Yeah, if I could jump in, I think what you're asking, Supervisor Counter, is the process. So the ordinance is the rule. The process for enforcement, though, would not be in the ordinance. The ordinance is a law, so it's only the rules. The process for enforcing it would be separate, and that would be more of a departmental policy.
And I would just add, Ken is absolutely right, we treat each violation, we process it in the most expeditious way we can, utilizing our corporation counsel for advice at all times, and they would not want a quantified set procedure. And so we do not have a quantified set procedure because that might limit moving expeditiously on a immediate threat to public health, safety, and welfare, or it might inhibit public right to due process or appropriate processes. So if you're asking, did we quantify exactly every step we take? No, it is not in here at the advice of legal counsel.
I mean, at the end of our ordinance, we have a violations section that would indicate and allow us to pursue people that are not in compliance with the code.
Last one I have is, and again, I didn't get through to see every single item on the packet here with the new ordinance. But with the campground issues, it sounds that you're creating a campground portion in the ordinances. And I guess the questions I have on that one, just to make sure if they're in there, is on the concerning, mostly it's on safety provisions, but one of them is, I know there's state requirements if you go, I think is it over 59 sites or something, or 50 sites and plus, that there's a requirement for bath, shower, and a dump station on that's state statute. I don't know that if we can use that for campgrounds that are smaller than that or not, if the state says no, but this becomes kind of an issue with the dump stations. You know, we've had issues in the past with some of the businesses where people would leave after event camping and just regular camping, and they were pulling the plugs and draining their trailers, their campers, going down the road. And it made for a lot of upset residents in the areas where this took place. The other was a concern for safety in the showing a location plan so that all of the sites are individually named out where they're at in a map. And the concerns with that become when some of these events, especially the event camping, they can have an excess of 500 units in there. And if somebody calls in with a heart attack and they need emergency services, if we don't have any type of mapping or any way to identify where everybody is at on those sites, makes it extremely difficult to have timely service to have for safety reasons. The other item I had on campgrounds was developing potentially limits on how many times a year you can do special event camping before it's considered permanent camping. You know, if you're going out and you're avoiding the permanent camping regulations by doing 15, 20 special event, it's kind of circumventing the rules that the state had put in the first place. So that's what I have on that. Thank you.
So the provisions we have for the additions to the campground spell out quite a few of the site plan submittal issues. These are items that need to be shown on the site plan. If you look at letter O, we talk about garbage, refuse, recyclable containers. We are not more restrictive than the state. And so just to clarify for committee members, a campground operator also has to get approval from DADCAP, the Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection. And again, our county Health and Human Services would be the inspection agency. So whatever rules are in place at the state level, and I think you're right, I think it was over 50 sites if I'm not mistaken, we follow those rules. This provision for campground, the changes that we're contemplating, really don't get into the special event campground issues. Those are also regulated by DADCAP. And when we checked with DADCAP about a year ago, that is one provision that the county could look at restricting more than the state. So the draft we have here doesn't do that. It just addresses the general campgrounds. But in terms of special events, we would need to add or research that further.
I'm sorry I can't get into this one a little bit, but I've been dealing with it for many years with it. But one of the deals with the special event, and you're correct in that the state has very, very little language regarding special event camping. And one of the issues with that has been there is no requirement as far as mapping on special event and dealing with where people are at, or making sure that you keep a safe road pathway. There is a restriction of how many can be on a particular piece of property by density, but you can take the entire group and put them on 2 acres that should be on 40. And I'm exaggerating a little bit. The problem you end up with is that in past experiences throughout the state, we've seen where they'll have tents that are way too close to motor homes that are running generators, and people getting exhaust poisoning. So it's all about safety and making sure that those things are addressed. And this may be something to take up at another time, of course, but I'd like to at least consider some of these things so that we think it through if we're at this point in drafting regulations for it.
Thanks, Scott.
We totally understand what Ms. Supervisor Counter is saying, because we have stacks of complaints related to everything he said. And we have, as John mentioned, looked into it at the state level and found out what we can and can't do. But, and we did discuss possibly, we felt that adding, even though these are state regulations, adding these into our ordinance would help us to respond to the many complaints we get. And of course, we pass on appropriate ones to public health to deal with, but there are some that are more of a property design issue. So this will help us with the permanent campgrounds and should make a difference. When it comes to the special event camping, we did research it. We do have some information, but at this time, we were focused on trying to get this particular change made. If you as a committee want to direct us to try to draft some language, we can certainly do that, but it is a bigger change, and you might want to, you need to decide if you want us to move this forward and then come back, or with a smaller change related to special event, or if you prefer we take a little time and try to draft something at this time. So.
Special events camping is pretty narrow, as far as I understand, to one township in the county. Is that right?
2 townships, and it, we checked, there are quite a few events during the year. It's not a small activity in this county. Perhaps Scott could address that more accurately.
What's
Oh, we'll say that.
what's the timeline before we actually finish this process, John?
Depending on the direction of the committee, we would need to give corporate counsel some time to take a look at the changes we're contemplating. I'm assuming that would be a couple weeks to 30 days. You know, we're into June. I mean, I don't think it would be unrealistic to shoot for perhaps an August public hearing date. That's assuming you want to go forward with what we have and not add any other things that would need additional research.
Anybody have a thought on this? Talking about, we're talking about adding a category here for special event camping. Jerry, you got a thought?
Well, to me, it makes sense if we're going to, if we've been working on this for a while already, that maybe we should add these extra special event and consider it all one piece, one package, rather than piecemealing it in later. Perhaps a lot of the stuff that has been done would point towards suggestions as to how this new category should fit. So I would think that would probably be wiser than passing part of it now and then part of it later.
I basically agree with everything Jerry said. Might as well do it all now, since that came up now.
I tend to lean in that direction, but I would like to know how hard is it to add something if we go through with finishing this work and amending the zoning ordinance, then if we make it a priority to go ahead and do this special event camping, by that time we're not going to finish this to enact it during this camping season. if we were to finish that work during the winter and then amend the zoning ordinance, does that make sense? Would that be palatable for you guys? Because this is ready. This work has been going on now for how long? 2 years?
About a year and a half.
Year and a half? If we could move this to completion and then do an amendment to the zoning ordinance in 6 or 8 months with the camping, I'm thinking that, and I'm with you, I get the logic, but I'd like to take, having participated in this a little bit, I'd like to take this to fruition and then come back, because I agree with you that we should do the camping, the special event camping, but I'd like to see this done, because it's current topic for John and his staff. I'd like to see this done and then come back, and I'm wondering if you would agree with that, if we could give staff the direction to come back to this and get it done in the winter. Could you clear to that?
Yeah, I guess I have no reason why the other has to be done. The only thing is, I look at the timeline, and I believe John said August maybe for a public hearing, but maybe not August, maybe September. The camping season in Wisconsin is probably winding down by August. It's too hot to camp in Wisconsin, western Wisconsin in August, and it's too cold in September. So, I think it's not that we're going to make a large, it's going to have a large effect, because by the time the information of this gets out, it'll be next camping season anyway.
Right. So let's just, would everybody give a thumbs up to move forward with this on this schedule that John's presented, and then ask him to go with the special event camping for later in the year? Okay, that's good, good. Excellent job. Any other questions? Mr. Van Sauer.
I just have a comment to make, and I read this thing through because a lot of these things are interesting, and I'm new to this, and I want to applaud you for all the work that you've done. It's amazing the amount of corrections and typo corrections, and to me that's very important. My wife is one who reads anything. If she finds a mistake, she gets kind of bent out of shape about it. But and that's fine. I'm glad that you've caught all of those, because there's nothing that makes us look less ready for things and typos and spaces and double spaces and capital letters where they shouldn't be. So I applaud you for all the work that you've done.
Yep, and all of our staff have been great. They've been catching little things that need to be corrected or added, and we've been getting good contributions from everybody. So, yep, thank you.
Thank you, John. Look forward to seeing it wrap right up. All right, let's go back to item number 1 and invite Dennis to present an overview of the parks.
So, good evening, Mr. Chairman and committee members. I'd like to give you a short overview of the Parks Division. 2 years into the coronavirus pandemic, one thing was made clear: parks are essential. In a normal year, 260 million people across the United States visit a park, a trail, or other park and recreation amenity at least once. And I'm going to show you that increased in St. Croix County quite a bit. Parks are key to helping the public improve their overall health and wellness. They help in combating some of the most complicated challenges our country has faced: physical and mental health, obesity, and physical inactivity. Parks provide outdoor recreation facilities that serve a wide-ranging, broad-based population and meet public expectation in planning for protection of natural resources, water quality, and wildlife habitat. The St. Croix County Park System encompasses 2 full-service county parks, one with overnight camping, 2 county parks with limited facilities, 4 boat landings, 3 kayak canoe landings, 2 county forests, 3 beaches, one 5-mile paved hiking and biking trail, one 7-mile off-road hiking, biking, and snowmobiling trail, and many extra miles of trails at various park sites. Other properties have been purchased by the county for natural resource protection and outdoor recreation activities such as Eckert Bluff lands, which we are seeking to develop. The Parks Division also manages 10 earthen dams throughout the Glen Hills watershed. And some of those could possibly be used as future parklands. It wouldn't take much to put a trail and a couple of benches in. So the Parks Division is a division of the Community Development Department. And we work closely with other divisions within the department, such as Land and Water Conservation, which protects quality of natural resources as it relates to fish and wildlife habitat, and also enhances water quality. Plans and grants, which John works closely with, develops master plans and other planning efforts that ultimately become the basis and guiding documents to help shape project discussions. Maps, GIS, and land information is another one we work closely with. They provide online access and search capabilities for parcels, tax and assessment data, and historical aerial photography. And an example, maybe it's not a great example, but would be Wildwood Trail. I had to find out who those 50 landowners were that were adjacent to the trail before I sent my letter out. Apologize if they thought it was nasty. I was trying to just be firmly word it. Administration and revenue, procurement and marketing is another division we work closely with. They're the folks that do all of the collection of our fees and charges. They arrange for past sales and purchase all supplies and materials for operational needs, and they also market and publicize our programs. And I put this in to show you the difference between 2019 and 2020. We sold quite a few more passes, park passes, a 51% increase. Now that's kind of leveled off, but I think this trend is going to continue, that we're going to have many more people than we had 2 years ago. Park affiliations make a difference. Not only are we members of the Wisconsin Park and Recreation Association and the Minnesota Recreation and Park Association, we are members of the National Recreation and Park Association. And these are the go-to organizations that we look for all kinds of information from them, from metrics on population and how things average out to other metrics. They provide quite a bit of environmental information, a lot of training that we can utilize from them, and a lot of resource guides and things like that we use. We also work closely with agencies like the City Parks Alliance, National Association of County Park and Recreation Officials. Whenever we're looking for information, those are the groups we go to. And they can provide information on environmental stewardship and conservation, park metrics, training, certification, project planning and design, communication, workforce development, the list goes on. These organizations help to promote the idea that parks build community. Parks are foundational to creating healthy, thriving communities, both physically and mentally. So how do we stack up against national averages? Well, this slide shows you that we're about even with the revenue to operating expenditures. Here's kind of a surprising statistic. Full-time equivalent employees per 10,000 residents, the national average is almost 9. Ours is 1. Residents per park, the national average is 2,300. We have almost 6,700 people per park. And this one, 10.4 acres of parkland per 1,000 residents. We offer 15.6 acres per 1,000 residents. And another kind of surprising statistic, our operating expenditures per capita are only $9 a year, where the national average is $93. The outdoor recreation plan is our guides us through everything we do. By Wisconsin state statute and through county board resolution, the county is authorized to prepare and adopt a development plan. The outdoor recreation plan is an element of St. Croix County's comprehensive plan. And because this was adopted, we now have the ability to go to Wisconsin DNR and apply for grants. We're trying to meet all of the goals. We're working on every one of these. Promote implementation of the bicycle and pedestrian plan. That's something that John has been working closely with. The TAP grant for Highway 35 or 53, I can't remember. Identify, acquire, and retain lands for outdoor recreation and protection. Well, that's something else that we've been doing over the years. And that Eckerd Blufflands area is a good example of that. I won't go through every one of these, but I can tell you that we have worked on all of them. Since 2021, some of the accomplishments that we've met are, we opened the new Homestead entry station, it was completed and opened. Hired our new park property manager out at Homestead, but he's got responsibility for all the parks on the western end of the county. We initiated an intern program. This year we have one law enforcement intern from River Falls, UW River Falls, and he's worked out really great. We've made improvements at Bass Lake Boat Landing, worked with the DNR and Bass Lake Rehabilitation District to put, this will be the last year that they put fish cribs in at Bass Lake. Parking improvements, those areas were leveled and recycled asphalt was spread at those parking lots. We had the grand opening of the St. Croix River Crossing Loop Trailhead, which was delayed due to COVID. A new picnic shelter pavilion was built out at Glen Hills, and that's now operating. People love it. Feast signs and feast safes and signage were installed at Bass Lake, Pine Lake, boat landings, and St. Croix River Crossing Loop trailheads. And this is something that the intern is helping us with. We get a lot of people that, even though it's posted that you need to pay the fee, buy a pass, they don't always do that. And so we have a park fee violation notice that we issue them. The Wisconsin Conservation Corps came out and helped us build 180 feet of boardwalk and an observation platform at the Orff Family Overlook, which is just above Bass Lake. And they're coming back this summer to add another 180 feet and really improve the trail system out there, build a stone stair step up to the parking lot, and some other tasks. Information kiosks were installed at Homestead Parklands and the Loop trailheads. We had staff training in worksite safety, first aid, CPR, and also chainsaw safety. It's the second year. We just finished level 2 of our training in that. Some more things, snowmobile trails, we coordinate all the use of those with the local snowmobile trail clubs and the DNR. We had a Halloween event out at Homestead, the first one. We were expecting 150 people and over 700 showed up. So that lasted a little longer than we thought it would. We positioned some large limestone blocks out at Bass Lake on the peninsula out there. And that was a pretty clever way that my staff decided to do that. They waited till winter and they slid them across the ice with, sorry, I'm not used to this. They slid them across the ice, and now we have 3 nice big blocks out there that you can either enjoy nature or do some fishing, whatever you want to do. And with that new boardwalk, you can now get out to the end of the peninsula. In the summertime, before, you couldn't do that because the water cut you off. New AEDs were installed at Glen Hills and Homestead Parklands, thanks to our county administrator. He bought those for us. Daily maintenance, trash and snow removal, mowing, weed and invasive removal, signage repairs, on and on. We provide that on a daily basis, and we also provide outstanding customer service. These are some of the projects that we have either we're working on or are coming up. The second camper cabin was opened at Glen Hills. It's available for rent now. We just had it painted last week. And I think just about every weekend in the summer is booked already. We had the new group camp that construction began on, and they're going great guns out there. They've already excavated and leveled everything off. They're pouring the foundations as we speak for the shelters. The Challenge Incarceration Program, we use those folks out at ORF Family Overlook. They helped us relocate trash receptacles, build a pathway to the picnic shelter, and we're going to build a privacy screen around the porta potty out there. And as I mentioned, Wisconsin Conservation Corps crew are coming back this summer to help us. We're going to replace electrical pedestals out at Glen Hills. We have a water drainage control project out at Glen Hills that one of the folks in our resources department division is helping with. The Highway 35 TAP grant that I mentioned is progressing. We've had inspections of dams 1, 3, and 11, and we have dams 2, 5, and 10 that need some minor repair. And we've already got a contract out to have that done very soon. In the future, with KIP projects, we've got a group or a RV camp expansion and renovation. It's in the location at Glen Hills where the group campground is now located. And another KIP program, we'd like to build more cabins out at Glen Hills. We think that we can rent every one of those. And then again, Eckert Blufflands Park Development. Tree thinning, we're going to do that at both of our county forests and 2 of our bigger parks. And that is just about the end. I'd just like to say, in summary, parks should be supported through funding and policies that enable us to continue to expand efforts in making positive change in the health and wellness of citizens while protecting the natural environment and safeguarding our resources for future generations to enjoy. That is the end of my presentation. Does anybody have any questions?
Any questions for Dennis? a great presentation, great parks. That event last Halloween was just amazing. How I didn't get to go because I had my grandkids someplace else, but when I heard the reports and saw the photographs, I was absolutely blown away at how popular it was and what a great job that parks staff did. Just phenomenal.
Thank you.
You know, we did the groundbreaking at the new campground out at Glen Hills not too long ago, just last week, and it's all very exciting. So, thank you very much, Dennis.
Thank you.
Now, if you look at the agenda, we're going to do item number 6 because we have a register of deeds waiting to help us out with this, Beth Pabst, and we're going to take item number 6. So with your forbearance, that's where we'll head right now on the agenda. Thank you. Unless somebody objects to that.
Good evening. So, what this resolution is about is the transfer fee that's collected. It started way back in 1914, and it was originally monitored and managed by the Internal Revenue Service. So for the next 55 years, the Internal Revenue Service is the one that collected that fee. Then in 1969, the fee was changed to be done at the more local level, so at the Department of Revenue, and it was $1 per 1,000. So the state got 50 cents for every dollar that we collected, and we got 50 cents for every dollar that we collected. Then in 1981, and that's based on the transfer fee, so for every $1,000 in the value of a sale. Then in 1981, it was changed to $3 per $1,000, and then when that change was made, the split was changed also. So 80% was actually to be sent into the state, with the county retaining only 20% of that fee. So in essence, we actually did get a dime more per thousand, but of course the state was collecting $2.40 more per thousand. So a few months ago, a resolution started going around. There's Price County, Outagamie County, Jefferson County, and Vilas County. And those counties produce resolutions similar to this one, where it indicates that the state now has this huge budget surplus, and yet at the county level we're still struggling to make ends meet. And with most of the costs for maintaining this program, a lot of being done at the local level. So my staff does a lot of the work in guiding people through the transfer returns, and we take them in, we collect the fee, then we send it off to the state. So that's kind of what this resolution is about. So the only other point I want to make is every time we kind of sometimes open things up like this at a state level where we're saying we would like a little bit more of that piece of the pie, sometimes the inadvertent or the undesirable happens where somebody else wants to hold their hand out and get a piece of that pie also. So that's my only caution in a resolution. This is just a suggestion to the state. It is a good suggestion, I believe. It would help the county out quite a bit. Does anybody have any questions on the transfer fee or anything like that? Over the past 5 years, we kind of did a little compilation. If the transfer fee were 50-50 for the past 5 years, our county would have collected a little over $3.6 million more than what we did.
Questions for Beth? Everybody's reading furiously. So tell me in real layman's terms, where does the transfer fee come from exactly? And
So like, let's say you bought a new property. I gotta get my math going right here. Let's say it was worth $10,000. And I paid Ken $10,000 for a piece of his property there. I have to pay a sales fee or a transfer fee on that amount, $3 per $1,000. So there would be a $30 fee collected on that $10,000, if my math is right. Of the $30, I'm going to take in the whole $30. We're going to keep 20%, which goes into our general fund, but the other 80% I send monthly down to the Department of Revenue, Department of Administration.
And what we're going to do is ask the state to just send us a little bit more of that.
Let us keep a little bit more every month, yes.
Right. And that's what the other counties are doing, and what we're hoping to do then is go to the Wisconsin Counties Association. It's too late for us to get that on the agenda as a St. Croix County item. However, we can speak up in the business meeting and weigh in, and we intend to, in support of the other counties' resolution, and we will have sent this to the legislators, and they will have seen it from St. Croix County, so it'll have nearly the same effect if we pass this. So we'll need a motion, second, and we'll take a vote on it.
I have ask a question for Beth first.
Go ahead.
Sure.
Beth, are there any downsides to this except for the third hand that might be in the way?
Not really, no.
Okay.
And again, it doesn't get retained by my department. It goes right into the county general fund. Whatever we keep goes into the general fund, and that's going to help Ken make ends meet a little bit better.
That's
He's
a relief.
the guy.
It's a relief to us to know that it's not going in your department.
I know. Ken doesn't let me even keep half the money that I take in. No, I'm just kidding. It is the county's money.
Thank you, Beth.
You bet.
All right, we'll need a motion.
Make that motion. I make that a motion that we allow the resolution to be passed.
Do we need to send this to the county board? So
I'll-
it's a
okay.
motion to refer to the county board.
Refer it to the county board.
I'll second that motion.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to refer this to the county board for their approval. Any further discussion? We'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry, we have further discussion.
I just want to, I guess, put in public record that I would like a decent portion of this to be used to save on the property tax burden on the county as a whole.
If we can convince the legislature to let us have it,
Yeah.
boy, we can sure put that plug in. I could agree with that. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, same sign? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
You bet. Step by and see me.
Thank you, Beth. Thank you for coming. All right, let's go back to the financial report and ask our administrator to help us out.
This is what I thought everyone was here for this evening, but I guess I was mistaken. All right, so the financial report is in your packet. This is reflective of the financial details through May. So again, if you look at this third to last column, this is May year to date. We're looking at the Register of Deeds, what their expenses are. And then 2 columns back is May of where we were last year. So you can see where we were for expenses there. I don't have anything in particular to point out, but I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have on the financial report. Everything's pretty standard. Same thing happens every year about the same time. It gets to be old news for me. I know it's new for you guys, but
Ken, I see red ink on the fairgrounds. Could you explain that? 46,667 report total.
Yep.
FY '22.
so we record the revenue 1/12 every month. So the only revenue source is general property taxes. So we have $80,000 revenue. We've recorded 5 of those 12 months of revenue, so $33,000. We have written the check to the fairgrounds for the year. We cut them a check just once a year. So they've had 100% of their expenses, but only 5/12 of their revenue. I can guarantee you that they will break even right to the penny by the end of the year.
And Judy's question always is, any red flags?
No.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, very good. Ken, thanks very much. The next agenda item came as a request, which is a preliminary discussion on budget items, and we were going to ask Ellen to tell us, and Ken, what big items are coming, how the budget process is coming, kind of describe where they're at. And then I wanted to incorporate in that a conversation between us, the members of the committee, what our priorities are. And this is for the benefit of Ellen and Ken. If you have any guidance or thoughts or what your priorities are for this budgeting process, what your expectations are, because now's the time to say what you're thinking. So I'm going to turn it over to Ellen and Ken, and please share with us where you are and what are the big things that are going on with the budget.
Yeah, I'll start with where we are structurally with the budget. So early in the year, we hear from all the department heads. That was back in March. Then the county board adopted their budget priorities for us, which was my guidance that I pass on to the department heads. The guidance the county board has given me is, first of all, take care of the structural deficit that we have going into 2023. Second, do something about compensation, considering the consumer price index is up 8.6%. We need to do something about adjusting compensation as a priority item for our employees in order to remain competitive in the marketplace. Third then would be health insurance. So we want to make sure that we're maintaining a good benefit package, but we'll probably have to make some adjustments to that health insurance plan being at the third tier level. Fourth is new positions, and fifth is operating expense requests, new operating expense requests. New positions, you basically forget it. At fourth on the list, there's not going to be any new positions in 2023. And operating expenses, fifth on the list, forget about it. If you have something new you want to spend money on, it's going to have to wait. So those are the guidelines that I provided to the department heads. So where we're at is I provided that information. Just at the beginning of this week, I sent out their baseline budget, which is the starting point for them, which is where they ended last year. By the end of July, they will submit their budget requests to me. I'll go over that in August with them, hash through all of the details. September, I will come back to this committee and all of the standing committees and go through their request and gather additional feedback from you so that I can put together a balanced budget. That balanced budget will be presented to the Committee of the Whole in October, and I will ask you to vote on the budget then at the November County Board meeting. So that's where we're at. So right now when you ask, well, what are the big changes? I don't know what they are. I haven't gotten that from the department head. Ellen's probably working through that, and maybe she knows what some of them are, but that's where we're at in the process.
So the question to me is to what were significant budget changes? We don't, at this point, I'm not sure. I have a few possibilities. I know that last year, I think I mentioned this at the one of our meetings that we had with the new board, but mentioned that we had a few things like we would like to apply for some new staff, but we've been told that there won't be any new staff unless they are completely funded. We had identified for the last couple of years a new additional person in parks, full-time equivalent, and an additional person to keep ahead of the growing development activity we have in this county. And but I'm not going to be requesting those this year because of our no new positions guidelines that I've been given. As far as other things, I had also mentioned for the 2022 budget in 2021 that one of the county's priorities, and it still is a priority according to the strategic plan, is our groundwater and surface water initiatives, and focused very heavily on the groundwater initiative. And there was, when we first started that, we were able to move an existing position in order to have a employee who's focused on that. That's their main priority, about 80% of their position. And there's just a few other things they do. And there was also some funding left from the, those of you are almost all new, but there was a initiative where the county board set up a task force We met for every 2 weeks for 9 months in 2017, and a groundwater report was created, and ground and surface water, mostly groundwater report, and we ran out of time to do surface water separately. And then there was initiatives identified and reprioritized, and we've been working all of those. We've been accomplishing a lot in all of them, and there was some funding left over from that task force, and I think that's too strong a word, but I don't remember what they called it. And so anyway, we've used that money up, and now we're kind of limping along by grabbing pieces throughout our budget, and I identified that it would be nice to have some direct funding for that, especially for the ongoing testing. I gave a range of anywhere from 20 to, I think, 50,000, somewhere in there. It still would be good. Costs are continuing to go up, and that it'd still be nice to see at least 20, 25,000 set aside. I don't know if you consider that a significant budget request, but that was one that we did ask for. And we've been kind of making things work, finding ways to do it, spreading things out. An impact might be if we don't see a little extra money, we will have to stretch our objectives out longer, because without the testing, there's less that we can accomplish, because that was the big focus of the groundwater report, is to create a baseline study, and I want to get into it in the weeds here, but just that was the core work that they wanted us to do. And education, which we are doing, and that we keep the costs way down on that part. So some other things that I don't know that I'm going to ask for these in the budget, but when I met with my leadership team and said, hey, we were going to meet a little later, but let's move this up a little bit. A couple things that we've been identifying a little bit is we want to make a few improvements to our parks reservation system. I was not intending to ask for a lot more money for that. We'll do a couple things this year, a couple things next year. It'd be nice not to have to spread that over 3 years and do a little bit more, but again, we're not, the whole effort would cost about $30,000, and so I don't think we need to do that all in 1 year, but that would be a nice to have. And again, that's not a huge amount of money, at least from my point of view. I don't know if it's significant to you guys. So I'm trying to think. Another thing that is going to happen is, obviously, we operate a campground and we operate parks. We've had to over the last few years. We've seen that increase in attendance that Dennis mentioned. Increased attendance means increased garbage collection, increased sanitary costs, increased electricity costs for a campground. So I've been raising those costs, but I will say, and can confirm this, we have brought in way more revenue than those costs have been, and we've been able to justify because our revenues have been way up. So we've easily justified any increase in costs. I don't know if the current inflationary situation may mean that it's a little closer to break even than we've added money to we've come out ahead, okay? So there will be increases, I'm sure, in a few of those things, but I don't know what those are yet. We haven't even looked into it. We get notified, we watch it, and sometimes we reach out during our budget process and ask our vendors, because most of those are outside vendors, what are the costs, that kind of thing. We'll see trends already this summer. We'll react to those. We like to get 6 months worth of data, because parks, obviously, we spend a huge amount of our money starting in May. So you look at the budget, oh, you guys got lots of money. No, we won't. By the end of the year, we won't have lots of money. So again, hard for me to answer that question right now. Here's something that's been on our wish list, and I don't expect you to fund it because we'll see, but if you want to know a wish item that's separate from capital, the internet service at the campground, we are limited to a single vendor, and the single vendor knows he's the only vendor, and our IT department has been super helpful and super supportive, and we all agree nothing's going to help the crappy service we get. So, and I mean service in terms of the word of internet service, not the people. And nothing's going to fix that except a dedicated broadband for the campground area of the park. We have it for the other part of the park, but not for that area. So it's expensive, and so keep looking for the opportunity to take advantage of something happening in the area. And that hasn't happened yet, and when it does, we might come and ask for some money. And in the meantime, it hasn't happened yet. So if you wanted a wish list item, that would be our wish list. And every year, the staff just beg for a more reliable source. Okay? So that's, I would say those are the things that we identified. We try to operate within our budget. We try to ask for a little bit here and there every few years, maybe at 20,000 here, at 20,000 there, but otherwise we stay within our budgets, and we work very hard at that. Our biggest increase in cost will be our employees. And our health insurance, which is the whole county. So, Ken, do you know of anything I'm missing? I don't know of anything. So, is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was looking for. I appreciate you taking the time to come up with that. I know that I just want to comment, I guess, my priorities, if that's okay,
Sure.
and maybe comment or respond to, ask a question, I guess, on the internet service. Have we looked into, I know there isn't, like Starlink is becoming pretty popular now, and it's more reasonable than some of those other services. Is that something that we've looked into for that area? I know it's not, like my house doesn't get it, for example, but some places around the county do.
We're talking Glenwood. That's the site. And we're also talking, the reality is even at locations at Homestead, for instance, where we have a dedicated line because broadband went just out in the road right in front of us, so we paid to get it in. Our IT director was smart enough to jump on that for us when it happened. Anyway, we have wonderful service up at the top where the new entrance station is. Down by the water, it's terrible, okay? That's just the way it is. Almost all of our parks have high areas and low areas down by the water. And so usually that means it's spotty. But again, we have it that it goes right in a dedicated line to the Glen Hills main office. But the campground is way back there, and that's where the entrance is, way to the back, past the golf course. And that has been not cost effective to take it back that far. And I will certainly follow up with John and see if Starlink is an option. I'll find out. Maybe it's more cost effective now, so.
And then, I guess to comment on the water program, I know that's been a big priority in the past, and I think I'd like it to stay a priority, just because that's not, I mean, 25,000 is a lot of money, but with all the work that's put into it, that's a small chunk relative to I think the value it'll add. And then with the new park. That has around $12.5 million. I think initially, I don't know that I personally would be comfortable with spending $12.5 million in one lump. And I feel like we could get some pretty good immediate usage out of it with doing most of the hiking trails and some entrance ways and a parking lot or two. And at least start using the land, making the land more usable as like a nature walk type of area.
We have been exploring grants, and so grants, are for sometimes areas, specific areas, and so I think we will. It's not in the KIP for next year. It's for a couple years from now, and I think that we'll be coming back with more information for you once we find out about some of those grants we did. And we may be able to do a little more than just what you suggested, so, yeah.
Yeah, I guess the last thing I want to comment on is I know that I'm sure the recycle day where you collect appliances and paint and stuff will get more expensive, but again, I think that's a service to the county, and maybe we have to reduce hours a little bit or something, but it's something we should still have.
Well, I left my slip with my scribbling on at home, but I was working on this past week because I knew we were going to have the meeting, but groundwater was at the top of that list. I think that's one thing that we can't wait and we can't mess with. You know, we can live without driving and putting $6 and $7 gasoline and diesel fuel in our cars, but it's, once you're thirsty for a long time, or maybe it's a short time, but you'd like it to be a long time. So that, I think, has to take a priority over parks and hiking trails and things like that. I agree we have to continue to use the land that has been given to us, deeded to us to enhance people's lives. I'm not real certain if the internet should be part of that. You know, maybe we should be the county that incites people to let the internet and the cell phone at home and go out and actually relax and enjoy the park situation. You know, park should be for getting away, not for getting into it, a different position and talking on your phone, working on your phone, and slapping mosquitoes with the other hand. So I think maybe that would not be my priority, although I know what poor internet service is. I live in Baldwin. So I'm in tune to that.
And just to clarify, we're not talking about internet service for the camping guests.
Oh, okay.
We're not talking about that. We're talking about internet service for just campground reservations.
Excuse me, I thought it was for
The guests? No.
Because that's a big thing in private campgrounds.
And that's something we don't offer, because we're not a private campground, we don't offer, there's a lot of amenities like that we don't offer, so. Even our new group camp won't have internet service for the guests, so. We're talking about just reliability for the staff, for reservations and rentals of watercraft to people.
Thanks for clarifying that, because I was thinking the same thing. I'm one who would like to backpack in at the boundary waters, and I just can't see doing that. But if that, I want to do what it takes to support the parks, and I didn't know what we were talking about there. So, anything else, Jerry?
No, that's it.
All right, Scott, what do you have? All right, Scott's happy. I'm pretty much happy too. I've been down this road, and I've have a lot of confidence in your ability to write a budget, and I appreciate the comments that I've made, and I'm glad to hear you guys talking about groundwater. You know, the origins of that was this county board came right up to the cusp, and I mean, we were about to take a vote to have a moratorium on CAFOs, and that ground and surface water study group was a compromise that prevented us from doing a moratorium, and it was the best thing because it gave us this program that's lasted now since 2017, and it continues to produce things like this conservation tour that we're going to enjoy here, and we'll talk about during the announcements. So thanks for your support on that. And I just went off the agenda, which is, I'm the one that's not supposed to do that. So, all right, that is the end of that, and we'll talk about the capital improvement plan budget now. Thank you, Ken.
All right. I have a sheet with a bunch of tiny little numbers here. So I'm going to explain what the coloration means first of all. So everything in black basically is from prior approved KIP plans. What you see in red is new dollar amounts on the plan. So we added fiscal year 2027. You see a bunch of numbers in red there. That's exactly what we would expect to see. When you see these numbers in blue, though, those numbers were on the plan before, but it was a different number. So usually it's a higher number because as we learn more information or it gets close to we're actually going to do it, we're adjusting for inflation factors. So you'll see the numbers in blue generally have been going up. All right, I'm going to scroll down through the plan now and get us to the parks, which is the part of the KIP plan subject to your jurisdiction. So the very first line is a recurring line. This is parks equipment. So this is lawnmowers and things that we need to maintain the parks. So we budget $18,000 a year. for recurring replacement. And so you see a red 18 out in 2027 as we've added the new year. The next line below that is maintenance of the driveways and parking lots in the parks. And so it's more periodic. It's not every single year. You can see we have 50,000 sitting out in 2024. That's been on the plan for several years. We've had prior years where we spent about 50,000. So we've added 50,000 out in 2027 where we'll be maintaining our parking lots. And that's chip sealing, paving, whatever is needed in the parks in those years. Our bike ped plan, project 75 here, you can see some blue numbers where we've adjusted these dollar amounts, and then we've added a new phase onto our bike pedestrian plan, and this is the loop trail through to Willow River State Park connection. If you want more details on the specifics of the plan, Ellen can go over that with you. As we scroll down then, you can see $1.6 million on Glen Hills camping cabins and infrastructure. It's blue. It's been on the plan, but we've adjusted the dollar amount for inflationary factors. 50,000 for Squaw Lake boat landing replacement. That's in black. That's been sitting on the plan. Out in 2026 then, we've adjusted the number for the Glen Hills Campground entrance station with restrooms and showers. As we do more projects and we see the inflationary numbers, we go back and we adjust these numbers in the plan so that we're trying to provide you with the most current estimate that we have available for you. Project 100 then is 1.8 million. It's the 22 site RV campground. It's been sitting on the plan for several years and starting to work its way down. So there's a new project here. We don't even have a project number for it. It's this $15 million number out in year 2025 for the Eckerd Bluff County Parkland Development. So we placed it in 2025 for a couple of reasons. One is, this is full development of the parkland, by the way, the $15 million. We placed it in 2025 out a couple of years because we don't have immediate cash or immediate resources in order to do it. So we know it's going to have to be a couple of years out. Ellen is working on some grants, though, that could potentially pay for significant portions of that. So if they came through, we would want to make sure that we are reflecting it on our plan and that it's within a period that grant would be able to cover. So we don't want to lose track of the fact that we want to develop the parkland. I don't have the resources for you right now to do that. And as we get to the next page, this gets into the revenue part of it. You'll see 21.4 million. This is a bond issue. So what we've done is we've looked at the flows of our projects and the flows of our bonding. So we borrowed $80 million this year. That's going to go through the end of 2024 for the government center addition. So we'll borrow a bunch of money. We're going to spend it over the next 3 years. And then that project will close out. Those funds are all spent. What I'm saying is that if we don't get a large grant, this is an option for the county board to consider in 2025. They could borrow $21.4 million. That's more than the $15 million Eckerd Bluff land, but that's the biggest project that's in there. There's a $3 million highway shop in there. We also have, I think, $1.8 million for the 22 site RV and the $1.6 million for the Glen Hills camping. So there's a whole bunch of park projects built into this $21.4 million. So if the county board at that point decides, okay, we have the resources, the borrowing capacity to do it, it looks good, the numbers have held steady even after borrowing the $80 million, which they're going to, we're going to be comfortable with borrowing $20 million in 2025 and taking care of some of these big park projects that, there's just no other way we're going to do these big park projects unless you borrow for them. So that's the plan. And then we sandwiched it in 2025 because The Government Center Space Needs Study is in 4 phases. So phase 1 is under construction right now. It's that warm storage building on the north side of the building. Phase 2, which will start construction later this fall and mostly next spring, is the addition mostly onto the south side of the building. Phase 3 of that building study plan was an additional jail pod expansion, and that was out 5 to 7 years. It's just now hitting the KIP. This is a public protection thing. But in 2027, we're anticipating is when the jail expansion would need to happen for $30 million. So we're trying to space out these bond issues so that we're not clumping them up too much. By spacing them out, it helps steady that tax levy so that I can keep it fairly steady and you're not seeing huge spikes in the tax levy. So that's why we picked 2025 for park projects. Get after the government center, but get before the jail expansion. So that's all the reasoning that went in behind the debt issue and the clumping of those larger park projects in 25. Questions now on any of these capital improvement projects?
I think I know the answer to this. That bike ped plan is about 80% grant covered, correct? Or 60, something like that?
It's 80 is the grants we apply for. I will just, in all honesty, say that phase 1, because of inflation, it's looked like it might end up being a little different, but we're also exploring ways that we would adjust that phase 1 so that it would not go over that. The county then pays only 20%. Right. And that's what it's set at, that's what it's fixed at. Phase 2, we bumped that up to account generously before we applied this year to account for as much inflation as we reasonably could, working with the highway department's assistance, and we've bumped up the phase 3, which is a very large phase, and plus we are exploring ways to split that into 2 parts so that we could continue to be funded 80 and 80 every time. There is a sweet spot that the state likes to fund in those TAP grants, and so we're trying to make sure we hit that every time. John Hilders, who was here earlier, who does the actual writing of the grants, he feels super confident. I won't say 100%, but very confident, probably 80%. We're going to get phase 2 of that. And that'll be very, very cool. That will connect us all the way up from North Hudson to Eckert Blufflands and Willow River State Park. And then the next 2 phases will get us from Willow River State Park up to the Loop Trail, which public enthusiasm, everybody who sees that is just, they want to see us make that happen. So I'll just say it's very, very popular. So, but we're trying to make sure that that cost is kept as low as we can, and we have some alternative plans to make things happen the way they should.
To answer your question also, yes, it's reflected on the sheet. So the revenues, so you can see project 75, we do record the revenues, which are labeled here as 80% TAP grants, which correspond to 80% of the project cost for project 75.
Scott, did you have something?
I just wanted, so as we're planning this out, and as you were talking about these projects and the difference in the numbers on the yearly basis and the spacing, is the intent, do you see as these years continue to transpire that with the different projects that the levy should stay fairly stable, or how do you see the levy changes?
Well, with our current economic growth, I would say yes, it would stay steady. The levy rate would be able to absorb some of these bond issues, even as large as they are. Considering a recession that I think we're entering right now, that murks the waters a little bit for us. So I don't want to say, yeah, we're going to be fine, because I don't know if we will be over a few year period here. But the general intent is that we're well-positioned in St. Croix County with our location. Nobody can compete with that. And so I think St. Croix County is always going to be a popular place for people to want to live here. And that's going to continue our growth rate. And I think that will help alleviate the tax levy burden for us to be able to afford to expand our facilities and our parks to match the growth of the county.
All right, and I've talked about camper cabins a few times, and I'd like to just say, as long as this is kind of relative to this, that the first two are open, and I've asked the staff to keep track of how long it takes us to hit that return on investment so that we can evaluate a return on investment as we consider the cost of the line item and use that as we make that decision, because it's easy to say no. It sounds frivolous, but when you're looking at how soon we hit ROI on those two, it should be able to inform our decision. So I just wanted to mention that. Ken, thank you very, very much. We're moving forward into announcements and correspondence. And Ellen, do you have anything?
Yes. No, the conservation tour, we have a couple people who are already signed up for it, Dan and Jerry. Thank you both very much. And it's next Wednesday, June 22nd. Starts at the Ag Center. The bus leaves at 9:30. You can come early for coffee and donuts. It will go till, I believe, about 3, 4 o'clock. And so it should be pretty good. We did have to, so I hope you weren't too excited about the CSA lunch stop, because that did fall through. We had to move it to another location. But the rest of it will all stay the same.
Excellent. Well, I encourage.
And, good.
Go ahead. I could encourage anybody else to go. It's going to be great.
Yeah, and we are paying for your registration, covering it. I guess might be the way to say it, since we're sponsoring it. So we're just covering it.
The conversation about water in St. Croix County is critical, and this is really going to address it. So, all right. Anything else?
And if you do want to go, all you have to do is let Julie know, and we can just sign you up. You don't have to do anything else. We are signing our board members up for them. And then we do have one other event that'll be coming up in July. On July 20th, they're bringing back the workshop on the water. This is an event that has been held for many, many years, except it stopped during COVID. This is sponsored by Minnesota and Wisconsin agencies. Our county sponsors it, but we don't put any money into it, but a lot of Minnesota ones do. And what it is a workshop on the St. Croix River to educate people about the St. Croix River and how special it is. This is the 50th anniversary of the designation of the lower St. Croix River, which is most of St. Croix County, except for a little portion is Upper St. Croix in Somerset Township. But the designation as a National Wild and Scenic Riverway, the lower part. So on this, the boat ride starts at 5 p.m. We take off from the Grand Duchess here in Hudson. You're on literally that great big beautiful boat. And usually they go north on the river. They sometimes go south. And then there is a light luncheon, and the guest speaker this year will be National Park Service Director, talking about the 50-year anniversary. And then what happens is there's 3 or 4 workshops. There are 4 levels to the bus or to the boat, and 1 workshop is on each level. You move around. It's every 30 minutes, and there's plenty of time to visit, to talk to people, and you can go to all of the different workshops, and they're quick. Like I said, they're about 30 minutes, 5-10 minutes moving around time frame, and it goes really fast. It's very, very good. It's all focused on the St. Croix, but usually there's at least, and one of them will be the zoning game, which is a really good game. I played it. No winners, no losers, just educated people. But it's very physical, it's fun. I'm not able to go that day this year. So I know that Mike will be on there, Mike Wozniak, and probably some other members of our staff. We try to send people every year. Julie's been on it and enjoyed it a lot. We try to make sure that other people, our new people, will go this year. It's just a great way to interact with leaders from Minnesota and Wisconsin and from all up and down the river and understand better what we're all trying to accomplish with the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act, protecting the river. So again, that registration is only $30, and again, we would cover your cost if you want to go, and just let us know and we'll get you signed up. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Requests for future agenda items. Anybody? Oh, an announcement. I'm sorry. Going backwards. Sean, announcement.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment. I went to the BLRD annual meeting last week, and they were very complimentary and enthusiastic about the changes the county has made to their landings. So I just wanted to mention that.
That's good to hear. Thanks, Sean. All right. Any other announcements or correspondence? A request for a future agenda item? Anybody? Oh, Scott.
Yes, I'd like to discuss the issues on the Wildwood Trail and potential or a concern for banning hunting.
All right, we'll consider that. Thank you. Anything else? Very good. The date of the next meeting is Tuesday, July 26th. Please note that that's not our regular meeting date, so it's easy to miss it if you're not careful. And with that, I will adjourn this meeting. Thank you all very, very much.